So my adventure through the states continues here this morning. We are now in a beautiful part of Illinois. We are in Pontiac, Illinois. Some really nice ground around here. And specifically, we are at the PTI Farm. We're here with GSI. GSI just finished up this grain facility here recently for the PTI Farm. I think that's going to be kind of their research deal around the economics of grain storage. Beautiful looking facility here, and actually kind of how I would like to have a grain setup in the future. Along with at the PTI Farm, it sounds like they put on a lot of trials. Someone told me that there's chickens running around in corn for fertilizer here. So we'll be experiencing that whole part of this here today. I don't know how much of that will make it into the videos. These are private events right now, but I believe here in the next week or so, you can get onto their website. I'll put it in the link below, and you can actually come and visit this, and it's open to the public. There's also a Fendt day going on, so there's a chance that we are going to be riding around in a Fendt with a Momentum planter. It's going to be a cool nerding out experience that I'm going to enjoy. So if you would, hey, thumbs up on these videos. Let's have some fun. So as I'm walking to the building to sign up for the day, if you look over my shoulders right there, there's a, lack of better terms, a lagoon. And from what I understand, this entire farm's pattern tiled completely out, and it has subsurface drip tape as well. So it's pretty cool that they reclaim all the water back to there, and then they irrigate out of there. This is kind of a farmer's playground here. So one thing that's going to be a little bit different about my visit is that I was there on a Fendt Momentum day. That's for customers or prospective customers of the Fendt Momentum planter. So they got to go in and look at what the planter is, you know, step by step, and why they designed the planter the way they did. If you actually look at the planter, it's visually very different than a lot of planters on the market. It obviously has a lot of precision planting parts on this planter, but if you guys were there, you'd probably see more or less the precision planting parts on a lot of different style of planters. This was focusing on the Fendt Momentum planter because obviously Fendt, Precision Planting, GSI are owned by AGCO, so they can all work together. And then after the inside meeting, we went and looked at the seed trench and how a good seed trench is created, and then finished with a little bit of a ride and drive in the morning. So a little after the Fendt ride and drive, we're now with Jeff Cravens. I'll let you introduce yourself, what you do with GSI here in a second. But this facility here was built over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And just recently finished up.
Yep.
Well, I'll let Jeff kind of give us a little bit of a tour and some of the things that I guess you guys hope to learn from this.
Okay, very good, thank you. So like he said, my name is Jeff Cravens. I'm with GSI. Been with GSI, this is year number 30 now, and I'm in outside field sales, helping support management for some of our territory reps across some of Eastern North America. So here at Precision Technology Institute, the whole goal here is about what we do well to increase profitability on the farm, right? How can we help you be more profitable? And that's part of the grain system experience here that we want to learn from as well. And initially, we hear talk about some of the phantom losses in the field and machine equipment losses and things like that. Now we can put some hard numbers to that and do some real life studies and hopefully gain some nutritional information from that to be able to bank on in the future. With that, we'll be able to maybe do some variety testing on possible dry abilities, how much different varieties are affected by and their dry ability is affected, even like fungicides, things we see more commonplace nowadays that we didn't used to see. We think there's some absolute merit to that, and I see it in my experience, but there's nothing out there from a test perspective or proof in the pudding yet. So There's a lot of things we hope to gain from this. We also have some new technologies in here to test with our grain view in-bin monitoring management systems, where you can automatically control temperature and moisture contents of grain, both bring those down for safe storage content and possibly even rehydrate some beans and things like that for I guess best capital gain possibilities with your grains when you go to market. So marketing strategies.
One of the things it sounds like that you're going to try and test is actually the optimal harvest moisture, and then how that actually affects to the cost per bushel to run it through a dryer. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep, spot on.
You want to give us a little tour of the facility and how it's set up here?
Sure. So here we have receiving, where the grain all starts, and this is been around a little bit, but not that long, a few years now. But it's a drive over chain loop, drive over Versaloop receiving pit conveyor basically. And this is just 8-inch, so it's only 4,000 bushel an hour. This farm is relatively small, and multiple owners involved in small plots, so it's nothing of speed we're worried about here. But they come in up to 12-inch and 10,000 an hour, so you can get some capacity. And from here the grain goes up. We have a wet receiving leg on our left here, and then dry leg, but we can go to each depending on what's coming out of the field. So from the wet leg up into a 10,000 bushel an hour hopper tank, which will go into, we have a portable dryer we can step around and see here on the other side of our control house.
Before we do that, so
Yep.
the semis can come here, dump into this, and what I like about it, it's relatively water. You're not having to worry about water so much in this. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, not really. With the overhead structure above it, and most of the time on the farm, you'll see these pretty much open, and they'll just make a rubber mat to go over them when they're not in use. Yep, something to shed.
And then another thing that I realized is that you can just pull up, and that little black switch right down there is actually like a sensor. So as soon as you open your hopper on your corn truck or bean hopper bottom, however you want to bring it here, it'll automatically turn that on, so you're not having to flip switches and stuff.
Correct.
And then also it sounds like you can't overload this.
That's correct. There's adjustability in that to control flow into the paddle conveyor itself. Yep.
Awesome. So now that you've brought in your, say, wet grain, and it's been dumped up to the hopper bin through the wet leg,
the dryer calls for grain as it's needed. If you look at the top of the grain dryer, there's a little bitty white electrical box. Pretty simple design. That's just like a paddle switch that rotates. It swings down as grain falls away, kicks the unload Versaloop on out of the wet bin, feeds the wet leg, and comes down and spouts into the dryer.
Can you tell us a little bit about this dryer? It looks like a portable dryer, except for it has quiet dry on it. What's the quiet dry point?
So the quiet dry is just the fan design specifically itself. Historically, the axial fans that come on our standard dryer models, there's a bit of noise associated with them. No secret in the industry. Like the small grain bin axial fans in the past were 3,500 RPM. They were really loud. These fans are slower, 1750 RPM, but they were not as loud, but still loud. Compared to this is more like the noise level, actually less than a centrifugal. They're very quiet. The load motor and the top auger is louder than the fan on the dryer now. You can stand right next to it and have a conversation. So pretty impressive on the noise.
So the quiet dry part of the dryer is the black
the front
tube metal there.
Yep. And you see how it branches out. That's because this is a split plenum dryer. So normally you would see 2 axial fans on this dryer, one for each plenum, and this one's big enough to handle both plenums. And then there's burner capabilities in the top and bottom, so you can run full heat or dry on top and pressure cool in the bottom. And this is a Q214, so it's probably, I know it's probably just a little over 800 bushel an hour on 5-point removal full heat, probably about 400 or a little more on 10-point removal full heat.
Definitely a different looking design.
Different design. That's called a mixed flow blade.
Before we hop into the bins, can we run into the shack and kind of show where all the brains and controls, and one of the things that we're dealing with and trying to figure out is the bin site that we're putting together is basically the shack, running the power to where everywhere it needs to be and being able to control it.
They have a fully integrated PLC control here for the whole system. And it's becoming more commonplace, but not as much on the farm as commercial. I'm referring to this right here.
Yes.
You can move grains, you can open gates, you can close gates. Almost everything out here that has functionality to it to move grain is controlled by the PLC.
So this is called the PLC. What does the PLC stand for?
Programmable Logic Controller.
So this would be something that if somebody doesn't understand exactly which switches to flip at the right time and where,
Yep.
What I understand is that you can't turn something on that will cause a down the road issue. So
Correct.
you have to turn on a conveyor before you can turn on a leg type of thing, so that the grain
Safety interlocks to prevent. So
yes. So that right there, obviously, visually makes it easier to understand what you're doing, but also safety for people that might not understand what to turn on and where.
Yep. Very
So
good.
if you have somebody that's in your shack says, hey, turn on to go to the east bin, well, now they can maybe do that a little bit easier.
Yep. And this is just our standard vision dryer control that's on all of our portable dryers and all of our modular tower dryers and all of our T-series tower dryers. The only thing that's not used on is top dry and our commercial Zimmerman tower dryer. But everything else has this control. Been around for a long time. Very proven, very user friendly.
And this doesn't have to be in a shack. This can be on the dryer itself.
Correct.
But if you get the chance to put it in a shack.
Yeah, they
Okay.
remote mounted this one. Yep.
The next thing that we run into is going to the bins, and there's grain views in a couple of the bins. Is that correct?
Yeah, all the bins have green view in here. Yep.
So at the farm they have 1, 2, 3, 4. How big are these bins?
They are 21 feet, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 rings, so probably I would guess roughly 15,000 bushel.
Okay. Very similar to my wet bin that we built last year.
Yep.
So-
And the reason for the smaller bins, you don't see much of this today, but this farm has a lot of different grain plots, right? Doing different things, and there's multiple owners involved, so you can do some segregation here, right? And keep things under control is why the bins are sized there.
But this layout right here is very similar to what I'm got envisioned for the grain facility that we're building, so it's really neat to see this. So we can stop before we get in. Our unload system is
Yep.
a drag from each bin.
Yep, we have inside the bin under the floor, we have round tube, direct gear drive, 8-inch power sweeps in 3 of the 4 bins. Our first bin has an underfloor chain conveyor in a box style conveyor, and there's a power sweep on it also. And then to catch all the unloads out of every bin, we've got a box conveyor coming down, and then it actually inclines and dumps into the conveyor unload out of this bin and goes back up to the dry leg behind the dryer.
I'll go show you that drag unload real quick. So, which just looks like a box. This right there, it's still getting constructed, but that is to run the power sweep, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so that's just to run the power sweep. But this guy right there is the drag conveyor that is being dragged out of that bin. And then on the back side of the bin, there's, I guess there's a run out over here. A tail sticking out, which is that guy. But also from what I understand, if you were to plan way ahead, you could basically run one of these drag conveyors straight through the middle of multiple bins.
Absolutely can. Yeah.
So if you were starting from fresh, that would be something very interesting to do. Basically exactly this thing, except for it's underneath all the bins and you don't have I guess the unload parts.
Yep.
So we have seen the grain view on the outside. That's what's on my bin. If we want to jump inside real quick. This looks, again, very similar. These are probably just temperature cables.
Moisture nodes spaced out on the cable all the way up.
And then just tied down to the floor.
Yep.
After the sweep needs to run around, it just cuts them off. Can we go see the Versaloop across the top?
Sure. So it's 8 inch as well. 4,000 bushel an hour is rated capacity. And it catches the first dry storage bin. And then there's just individual gates on every bin to dictate where the grain will fall, whatever bin you're filling in. And right now there's manual gates up there, but we have electric gates to go on them as well to be controlled by the PLC inside. So there's no up and down climbing or anything. So maintenance only to get up there is the goal.
Again, that's something that I would strive for, is to be able to conveyor across like that. Exactly this setup with the 2 rows of grain bins, basically a pipe to the wet bin and then the dryer, and then pretty much a pipe to each row of the bins, and then versa looped across the top, which with like the grain view system or something like that, you could just put in a certain level of corn in each one of those bins, turn the fans on, make it a lot easier than moving an auger around. So like Jeff said earlier, one of the big things that they're probably going to try and figure out is the phantom loss, which for nobody's really ever explained phantom loss that well. That's why it's almost called phantom loss. I heard you speaking a little earlier that you think it's because to dry down, the plant's actually using some of its sugars to supply itself to dry down.
It loses mass matter. Yeah.
So people have tried to figure out, you know, in between header loss and like quantify it, but you still leave some yield out there. They got a few signs here. It says harvest at 25% to stop phantom loss. Wait until 15%. Reduces dry matter and decreases yield by 6.2%. Is that 6.2%? Do you think that's across like really good corn, or is that like even like weaker corn, or is it just basically you could say 6.2%?
So I believe the article I read was somewhere just around a 200 bushel per acre average yield study on that, and I would guess that varies, because I would think more commonly you'd see an average closer to 180 or something until you get in just the really good areas of the country, and it goes up from there. But
so at 6.2% for quick numbers, that's 12 bushels on 200 bushel corn. 550-ish right now. You're 60, 70-ish dollars per acre in weighting in between 25 and 15%. And so what Jeff's going to be testing, or they're going to be testing here, is that $70 an acre that you could basically capture by not losing that 6.2%. Does that pay and put money in your pocket for owning a grain system or a drying system and drying the actual grain? And then another thing that they talk about is that wetter corn at a certain point shells nicer. Yep. I think probably my favorite stays whole. My favorite moisture for shelling corn is probably that 18-19% range, but I think a lot of people are saying start 24-25%, which that's pretty wet corn. The quality lock-in, that's probably talking about the grain view stuff, and I've talked about and Jeff and I've talked a little bit off of camera here about using the grain view system in our area to have the drying days to actually just air dry grain with enough fan power to dry grain from probably like 20% down to hopefully get down to 15% using the grain view system. And if things start to go awry with the grain view system, it'll alert us and say, hey, you're not going to accomplish your goal this year. The
Mother Nature's not your friend.
Mother Nature's not being friendly. I think your marketing plan includes spotting a lot of corn really quickly because she's not going to store for you. But if you're talking about ROI, a grain view system in a bin would be a very efficient way to dry grain. Maybe one of the other studies that you guys could do is be kind of easy for you is as the corn goes in here, maybe look at what the actual payback in the basis and the carry is, because that's what people might like to learn more about. It's like I'm going to be trying to do a video on that here soon based upon the bin that I built up, what the cost actually was for me to build that bin last year, minus the 3-phase, because that one was a little bit of a specialty part in there, and then actually look, since I've harvested that grain, where did my market move compared to my payment, and did it actually pay to own the bin, or did the bin pay for itself? So that's maybe something else that they might consider I guess evaluating, because that's something that I'd like to know. But are you maximizing your profit by owning?
And that will vary everywhere you go based on what marketing opportunities are in your area, right?
Yes.
Are you near ethanol? Are you near food processing, proteins, food processing, dairy market, whatever, right? They're all going to pay basis when they need grains.
when you get a text message from Cargill that says, hey, we got a hot ship bid here, can you get that corn out and send it? So this is a beautiful facility that maybe you might want to come up to the PTI farm just to see what the research part of this is, which we're going to go check out next. But maybe if you're just considering building a grain facility, come check this out and see what they've done here that you might like, and store it. So thanks, Jeff.
Yep, thank you.
And then we were on to the tour of the PTI farm. I cannot recommend this highly enough. Our tour was actually put on by Jason Webster himself. Very charismatic man, awesome presenter. What they do is they basically put you into a wagon that's covered, so you don't even have to walk anywhere. And when you go through and you get to see all the different tests and trials that they're doing, and I mean, some of the stuff is, you know, kind of within the box, and then there's some things that are definitely outside of the box, like they're strip grazing chickens and pigs or goats or something along those lines. I was thinking, you ride around all day or the afternoon for us, and you stop at individual stations, and he goes over the research that he's been seeing on the farm, easily broken out with nice pictures there. They break it into dollars so that you can see the return on your investment. Jason, like I said, is an awesome presenter. He opens it up for questions there. If you have questions, you can easily hear him with a microphone that's through the speaker systems on the trolley there. It was an experience, something that I would like to go back for and see the actual whole tour. And if you guys know me, I could probably make a 3-hour video picking the brains of guys like Jason. After we got back, they gave us an ice cream bar. Don't know if that's everybody gets it, or if it is now going to be mandatory to give away an ice cream bar. But they had a little Q&A session. But for me, it was a 5-hour ride home, so I ended up having to boogie on out. But I stopped there at Wally's, I believe was the big old gas station, grabbed myself some beef jerky, and headed back.
Pretty good stuff, a little beef jerky for breakfast. But it's the next morning. We made it home safely. Definitely an awesome trip out there to the PTI farm. Thank you for GSI and AGCO and Precision Planting for having me out there for the day. I do highly recommend, if you guys want to go out there and check that out. You'd be going out there for multiple reasons. Maybe you want to check out the new grain facility to get some ideas. Maybe check out some of the research or some of the precision planting parts to go onto your planter. I'll link all of the stuff that you need to figure out how to get to the PTI farm. I do believe that those tours are starting, I think it's this week, or if not, you guys will find out when you click on that link. It's not a high pressure sales deal or anything like that. It is a research farm. 10 out of 10, recommend. Head out there to the PTI farm. Thanks again, GSI. I got a couple of ideas for this facility on the next project. Thanks guys for hanging out with us. We'll see you in the next one.